What would you do if a furious man stormed into a diner slurring that he owed a criminal gang money and that delivering his own child might settle the debt? Would you stand between him and a terrified little girl you barely knew? This isn't a headline. It happened. Right here. A billionaire thought he was just grabbing a quiet cup of coffee in a small-town bakery. Instead, he overheard a trembling voice ask, "Can I pay later? It's for my sister." That one sentence pulled him into a world of hunger, hidden abuse, and a family secret buried for decades. But what he didn't expect, what none of us would, is that the child he saved wasn't just a stranger. She was blood. And when her father, the billionaire's own brother, returned to collect what he saw as a payday, everything came crashing down in one explosive moment. Stay with us because this story will shatter what you thought you knew about family redemption and how one loaf of bread can rewrite a legacy. What happens next will break your heart and then heal it in ways you didn't see coming. A bell chirped as the bakery door swung open, but no one turned. Greystone's morning crowd was busy scrolling phones and downing lattes. At 4 feet tall, Sophie Langston slipped in like a shadow dripping meltwater from her frayed sneakers. She paused at the glass case where steam curled from fresh sourdough, the warmth fogging her reflection, until she looked almost ghost-like, a child made of breath and hunger. She chose the smallest loaf, a shy brown oval, and hugged it to her chest as if it might bolt. When she finally reached the counter, her voice hovered just above silence. "Could I pay later, please? My little sister's sick. She hasn't eaten since yesterday." The cashier apron starched hairnet, perfect froze with the practiced smile of someone trained to upsell muffins, not negotiate mercy. 2 baristas glanced over then away. The espresso machine hissed like an impatient parent. Before rejection could land, a chair scraped at the back corner. Graham Whitmore, 38 fleece coat draped over a physique sculpted by corporate gyms, rose from the shadows. A handful of locals recognized him immediately, the Chicago tech titan who'd turned microchips into macro billions, a name most Greystone kids pronounced with the same wonder reserved for astronauts. He had ducked into Willow and Grain Bakery that morning to chase nostalgia, an ache he'd denied for 2 decades. Greystone was the town he'd fled at 18, when hunger felt permanent and ambition smelled like diesel fuel on the highway out. Now the scent of rising dough punched through the last of his boardroom armor. "How much for that loaf?" he asked, pulling out a leather wallet so thin it looked ornamental. The cashier named the price. Graham laid a crisp 20 on the counter. "Make it 2 loaves," he said, voice steady, but eyes stormy with memory. He slipped 1 loaf into a paper bag and offered the extra to Sophie. "You don't have to do that," she whispered. "I want to," he replied. Instinct told her she could trust him, but instinct was a luxury she hadn't afforded in months. After a shaky nod, she bolted outside, braid ends flapping like torn ribbon. Graham stood mid-aisle, the whole bakery thawing into noise again. Yet he heard almost nothing. In Sophie's small defiance, asking for credit with dignity and tact, he'd heard an echo, the teenage version of himself, begging a neighbor for peanut butter sandwiches, swearing that one day he'd make enough to feed an entire block. Somewhere along the way, quarterly reports had drowned that oath. Half a table away, a freelance photographer recognized the scene for what it could be: viral gold. She snapped a burst of photos, Graham the bread, the fleeing child, and posted them before his brain caught up. By the time his driver's black SUV pulled to the curb, the headline, "Billionaire buys bread for mystery girl," was already trending, open palms demanding more of the story than Graham himself possessed. He waved the driver off and stepped into the chill phone, buzzing like an angry hornet. Board members, reporters, even an old college flame pinged with the same question: why Greystone? For once, Graham ignored them all. He pocketed the device and followed Sophie's footprints. Little crescents stamping thawing slush east toward the river flats, where Greystone's hope went to rust. At Hillcrest Park, he lost the trail and forced himself to breathe. A woman in a puffy coat watched him from a bench, recognition dawning behind wary eyes. That viral post had reached the town faster than wind. He moved on, collar up, hoping anonymity might hold until he found the girl. An hour later, the landscape changed. Neat lawns, surrendered to cracked sidewalks and boarded windows. A hand-painted sign read, "Hollow Creek Residences," though the creek had long ago been culverted underground. 3 boys kicked a deflated soccer ball beneath a burnt-out street lamp. Graham knelt beside them, offered $10 for directions. They pointed to a staircase corroded by years of salt and indifference. As he climbed, mold thickened in the air, each step a memory of the tenement where he'd grown up, same peeling paint, same smell of forgotten dinners. Outside, a door painted an exhausted blue, he lifted a fist, but faltered. For a moment, he saw his past inside that apartment, a mother counting pennies for rent, two brothers arguing over whose turn it was to skip dinner. He almost walked away. But then he thought of Sophie's promise to return and pay, the kind of promise only kids who've tasted desperation bother to make. He knocked. Nothing. He knocked again, louder. A single eye appeared at the crack. "You're him," a small voice said. The bread guy, Graham admitted. "Can we talk?" The chain slid free. Sophie opened the door just wide enough for him to see the shadows, a mattress on the floor. A girl, maybe 5 years old, curled beneath a kitchen towel for a blanket, colorless lips moving in restless sleep. "My sister Ellie," Sophie explained. "She gets fevers." Graham held up a white pharmacy bag. "Medicine and soup." Sophie's skepticism looked too old for her face. "Why are you helping us?" He searched for the polished answer a publicist might approve, but honesty elbowed its way out first. "Because once someone helped me, and I forgot what that felt like until today." Sophie weighed the confession like currency. Finally, she stepped aside. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing in a cold that no thermostat could fix. Across town, the viral photo had detonated. News vans began circling Willow and Grain, hunting a statement. Graham's executive assistant sent a frantic text, "Your quarterly earnings call starts in 20 minutes." Graham stuffed the phone deep into his pocket, breath quickening as Ellie coughed in the corner. He knelt by the little girl, counted the shallow rises of her chest, and felt the walls of his carefully engineered life tilt. How many zeros did a fortune need before it could buy back a childhood? He opened the soup thermos, the steam curling like a fragile prayer in the dim. Just then, a thud echoed from upstairs, followed by a growl of male voices. Sophie stiffened. "Mr. Whitmore, you should go. Dad comes home angry." Graham's pulse hammered. "Is he here now?" She shook her head. "Soon?" He made a decision without asking himself first. "Pack some things. We're leaving." Her eyes widened, half terror, half hope. "You don't even know us." "I know enough," he said, though his shaking hands betrayed how little he knew of what came next. For the first time in years, he was writing a plan with no contingency, no exit strategy, just a single conviction that hunger should never dictate a child's future, especially not the children of Tyler Whitmore, the brother he'd sworn to forget. Footsteps thundered in the stairwell. Graham glanced at the door, then at Sophie. "Go," he whispered, "now." He scooped Ellie into his arms, she weighed almost nothing, and followed Sophie toward the fire escape at the rear. The metal ladder groaned under adult weight, every rung a siren to whoever was stomping closer. They were halfway down when the apartment door upstairs slammed open. A voice drenched in whiskey slurred something indecipherable. Graham pressed his back to the brick wall, clutching Ellie, heart ricocheting against her fragile ribs. Sophie's fingers found his sleeve. In that instant, he realized the distance between stranger and family could vanish in a single heartbeat, and sometimes did. We'll stop here for now. I'm sorry to interrupt the story right at this cliff edge, but would you have trusted Graham enough to follow him down that fire escape? Do you believe one act of kindness can truly rewrite someone's future? If this story has your heart racing, please tap like and leave a heart to let us know you're with us. We'll dive straight back in next episode. Snowflakes began to tumble from the graystone sky as Graham's Sophie and the feverish Ellie slipped into the alley, the clang of the fire escape ladder echoing like gunshots. Graham's breath plumed in the cold, while his pulse hammered louder than the footsteps still thudding in the stairwell above. He flagged down the first cab he could find, a dented yellow Crown Vic idling at the curb, and all but dove inside with the girls. Riverbridge Clinic, he told the driver, a place that offered sliding scale treatment, and he prayed no paparazzi. As the cab rattled away, Graham peered through the rear window. A silhouette staggered onto the metal balcony, 4 stories up, cursing the snow. Tyler. Even at that distance, Graham could read the posture, furious, drunk, dangerous. He held Sophie's shaking hand, and for the first time since his mother's funeral, Graham whispered a silent prayer that he wouldn't be too late. Ellie was admitted within minutes. Doctors hooked her to fluids, pushed fever reducers, and ushered Sophie and Graham into a corridor that smelled of bleach and anxiety. While they waited, Sophie dug into the pocket of her coat and produced a weather-stained letter. "I found this under a floorboard last night," she murmured. "Mom wrote it before she died." Graham unfolded the paper. The handwriting was his mother's. He recognized the looping G's instantly, but the words were a blow to the gut. She begged anyone who found the letter to forgive Tyler for the gambling debts he'd racked up with a Chicago syndicate called the Blackwood Crew. Then came the final line. They said one day they'd come for the girls if Tyler couldn't pay. Graham's skin iced over. "Why didn't you show this to anyone sooner?" "Who would listen?" Sophie replied. "People see me and think I'm stealing or lying." He crouched to her eye level. "I'm listening now, and I won't let anyone touch you or Ellie, not Tyler, not Blackwood." A nurse ushered them back. Ellie's fever had broken, but she needed antibiotics and stable housing. Graham signed every form put in front of him, then reserved a private room, the kind usually filled by CEOs recovering from skiing mishaps, and paid in full before the receptionist could blink. Within an hour, Ellie was sleeping under warm blankets, cheeks no longer ghost pale. But relief lasted only as long as it took Graham to check his phone. The viral photo had detonated on national news. His board had issued a statement that their philanthropic CEO was spearheading a new hunger relief initiative in Greystone. Well-meaning reporters were already staking out Hollow Creek. Worse, a private number kept calling, no voicemail, just silence. Graham knew a threat when he felt one. Blackwood had learned how to dial fast. He arranged for hospital security at Ellie's door and hustled Sophie to the parking garage. Snow had turned to freezing rain, layering windshields with glassy ice. Graham's SUV slid onto the interstate toward downtown Chicago, but halfway there, a dark sedan appeared in the mirror, headlights off, hugging every lane change Graham made. When he accelerated, so did the sedan. Sophie's voice trembled. "That's Dad's friend. I've seen that car before." Graham swerved into a rest stop lot, jumped out, and yanked Sophie after him toward the fluorescent glow of a 24-hour diner. The sedan slowed, brake lights pulsing red, then drove on. Inside, the smell of grease and burnt coffee did little to steady his nerves. They slid into a booth. "We can't go back to Ellie without a real plan," he said, scanning the window for taillights. "First guardianship, then relocation." Sophie stared at him in a way that made her look 30 instead of 7. "Guardianship means you're my dad on paper, right?" "Yes, and nobody can take Ellie or me." "That's the idea." She studied the puddle of rainwater dripping from her coat. "Then I'm in. But Tyler won't quit. He says blood is all that matters." Graham exhaled through his teeth. "Blood does matter. It means I'm not letting him ruin another generation." The booth's tabletop TV flickered with a breaking news banner. "Tech billionaire disappears after viral act of kindness." Graham quickly killed the volume, but Sophie had seen. Her shoulders sagged. "They're hunting you now too. Let them. We've got bigger problems than curious reporters." A police cruiser rolled into the lot. For a beat, Graham wondered if downtown Chicago had sent security, but an officer strode straight to their booth. "Mr. Whitmore, someone filed a missing child report. Your brother claims you abducted his daughters." The words landed like a gavel. Sophie's fingernails dug into his sleeve. Graham kept his voice low. "Officer, Ellie is hospitalized with a life-threatening fever. Tyler was intoxicated and incapable of care. Check my name on her admission forms. Check the doctor's notes. I'll come to the station, but not while she's alone." The officer hesitated. Procedure collided with compassion, then nodded. He'd verify the hospital records first. Graham watched him leave, every muscle wired for flight. "That report won't stick," Graham assured Sophie, though he wasn't certain. "Tomorrow we go to court. A judge will hear your story, your mom's letter, and our doctor's statement. Tyler won't have a foothold." Sophie's reply was a whisper. "What if the Blackwood Crew shows up before the judge does?" Rain hammered the diner roof as if to underscore the question. Graham realized he was more afraid now than during any hostile takeover or earnings call. He couldn't outcode a gang, couldn't outbid them, but he could outlove them, stand with these girls so publicly and permanently that any move against them would be a move against a man far more powerful and far more stubborn than Tyler ever was. A plan lit in his mind. He'd liquidate a chunk of Whitmore Innovation stock at market open, dump $10 million into a children's shelter fund, and announce it alongside Sophie's guardianship petition. Make the world watch. Make Blackwood blink first. Before he could say it aloud, the diner door swung open. Tyler Whitmore staggered in soaked coat, slick to his skin, eyes boiling with equal parts liquor and rage. He spotted Graham, bared his teeth in something like a smile, and lurched forward. "Thought you could steal my girls and my payday," Tyler's slurred voice loud enough to commandeer every silent table. "Blackwood says the debt's paid when I hand them a kid. Looks like you just served one on a plate." His wild gaze locked on Sophie. Graham rose, sliding between Tyler and the booth. "Touch her, and I'll bury you in lawyers and guards so deep you'll never see daylight." Tyler's fist cocked back, years of resentment coiled in tendons, and the diner plunged into crystal stillness. Cooks froze, customers gasped, and somewhere outside a semi's horn wailed through the rain like an air raid siren. "We'll pause here for now. I'm truly sorry to break the story at such a razor-edge moment, and hope you'll bear with me. If you were Graham, would you trust the legal system to protect Sophie and Ellie, or take matters into your own hands? And do you believe Tyler deserves one last chance at redemption, or is some damage beyond repair? If you're gripped by this tale, please tap that heart, and like the video, your support keeps the story alive." Tyler's fist hung in midair, a drunk comet frozen by the sudden scrape of metal behind him. The officer from the parking lot had returned with a partner. Both stepped into the diner with hands hovering near their holsters. For a breathless second, every soul inside weighed two possible futures, one drenched in sirens and shattered glass, the other in second chances. "Mr. Whitmore," the first officer warned, "I've confirmed the hospital report." "Lower your hand." Tyler's shoulders trembled. Graham saw the boy he once taught to ride a bike back when their mother's laughter filled their world, and he realized pity and protection could exist in the same heartbeat. He placed a calm palm on his brother's arm. "Ty, come with me. Let's fix this together." Tyler's clenched knuckles eased open. Tears mixed with rain on his cheeks, and the fight drained from him. The officers guided him outside without cuffs, leaving the diner silent but intact. Sophie exhaled shakily. "Is it over?" "Not yet," Graham said. "But the ending's shifting." The court hearing happened at dawn 2 days later. Snow still glittered on courthouse steps, reporters buzzing like winter wasps. Graham, in a navy suit that felt more armor than fashion, spoke of hospital records, Blackwood threats, and the letter their mother prayed someone would one day read. Sophie took the stand next, tiny feet swinging above the carpet, voice clear as church bells, telling the judge how Graham fed Ellie before himself, how he chased nightmares from their apartment, how he never once yelled. When the gavel came down, guardianship was granted. Sophie and Ellie Langston became Sophie and Ellie Whitmore. Outside, cameras flashed. Graham kept the girls shielded, yet one lens caught Tyler standing alone by a lamppost, clutching the judge's order like a final eviction notice from fatherhood. That night, Blackwood's reply arrived, a single burner phone tossed through the window of Graham's SUV screen, lit with a countdown timer. Message clear: pay Tyler's debt in 48 hours or the girls disappear. Graham's stomach knotted even as he dialed his CFO. $10 million liquidated, $500,000 wired directly to local shelters. Another $5 earmarked for Greystone's Food for Every Child initiative. Then he posted the pledge on every platform he owned, tagging city officials, child welfare agencies, and 3 national news anchors. Public light is the one shadow criminals can't tolerate. Blackwood crew vanished like cockroaches under stadium floodlights. By morning, city detectives raided their Chicago den and seized ledgers linking them to 6 rackets. Debt suddenly was no longer collectible. Tyler turned up at Riverbridge Clinic later that week, sober eyes red not from alcohol, but from too many sleepless nights wrestling regret. Graham met him outside Ellie's room. "I have nothing to bargain with," Tyler whispered, "but I want to try." "Then start here," Graham said, opening the door. Ellie was awake, coloring suns and stick-figure dogs. Tyler's voice cracked when she reached for his hand. For 10 silent minutes, he knelt beside her bed, promising versions of himself he hadn't yet learned to become. Greystone's winter thawed into spring. Graham bought an empty storefront 2 blocks from Hollow Creek, gutted years of decay, and painted the walls bright buttercream. On opening day of Sophie's Bread Come Hungry, leave hopeful neighbors lined the block. Graham flour dust across his blazer served coffee, while Sophie, now 8, explained the house rule: every child eats free. Every adult who can't pay may sweep the floor, read to kids, or donate when life improves. Ellie, cheeks full of color-stamped smiley faces on donors' hands. At noon, a familiar shadow hesitated in the doorway. Tyler, in a thrift store apron, clutching a reference letter from his rehab counselor. Graham nodded him in. Greystone watched, unsure whether to applaud or brace for chaos, but Sophie greeted her father with a spare apron and pointed him to the dish sink. Soap suds, it turns out, can't erase the past, yet the rhythmic wash, rinse, repeat kept his hands busy while his heart learned new muscle memory. 2 months passed. Media stories shifted from runaway billionaire to family bakery feeds hope. Donations soared. Mrs. Hargrove, Graham's former teacher, volunteered Saturday literacy classes in the back room. Kids who once lined up barefoot now debated superhero comics over cinnamon rolls. Late one evening, after the neon closed sign blinked off, Graham found Sophie perched on the counter, swinging her legs. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, thoughtful. "Dad asked if he could take us to the park tomorrow. Supervised, of course." "Should I let him?" Graham's throat tightened. "That's your choice, kiddo. Forgiveness is never a debt we owe. It's a gift we give when we're ready." Sophie studied her flour-smudged palms, then smiled softly. "I think I'm ready." Outside, Tyler mopped the sidewalk under street lamp glow. Graham stepped into the night air and offered his brother a coffee. They stood wordless, steam rising between them. Broken things, Graham reflected, aren't always thrown away. Sometimes they're reforged into tools that build something better. Saturdays at Sophie's Bread became community festivals. A brass trio from the high school played show tunes while kids iced cupcakes. Graham observed from the doorway, heart hammering a rhythm neither Wall Street nor childhood hunger could dictate ever again. One afternoon, a little boy approached the counter, cheeks streaked with playground dust. "Can I pay later?" he asked, holding up a single bun. Sophie bent down, eyes bright. "You can pay right now with a promise to help someone smaller than you next time." The boy saluted, serious as a soldier, and skipped away. Graham felt a tear gather, but didn't wipe it. Some legacies deserve to be seen. Before locking up that night, Graham flipped the open sign to a new message handwritten by Sophie Love: "Tastes better when shared." Now, dear viewers, our tale rests on that warm windowsill of possibility, fresh, fragrant, and waiting for the next hungry soul. If you held Sophie's power to forgive, would you invite Tyler into your life or keep the door gently closed? And do you believe public generosity truly scares darkness away? Or must we fight behind the scenes as well? What do you think of this story? Comment number 3 if your heart feels full. Number 1 if you're still craving a better ending. Or number 2 if you're somewhere in between. Tell us which country you're watching from and help Sophie's Bread travel the world. Like, tap that heart and share this video so no child ever walks away hungry again.